Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you who have been following my videos, commenting. I've been pleasantly surprised by the response I got from YouTube. So I'll keep doing these videos. I hope you enjoy them. And I hope you subscribe as well because I'll keep doing them. Certainly, I've been liking the experience and the exchange of ideas with you guys. So without further delay, I'm gonna be talking today about the top 10 barter items. One of the things that I get the most email about is about barter, which is the best barter item, which has been the best barter item in Argentina when the economy collapsed in 2001. What should I be buying? What should I be stocking up on? I always tell people the same thing. Just don't do it. Don't spend money on barter items because it's a huge gamble. It's a huge bet. You might as well go to Vegas and bet your money either on red or black because it's that type of thing. It's so uncertain and so impossible to predict, and especially since we're already talking about a situation that is unlikely to happen on its own. So if you take that further and expecting to have an item that's gonna be sought after so much afterwards, after this already unlikely event, it's a huge gamble. In spite of that, I keep repeating it and still get the same comments in the same email. Please, what is the best item I should be stocking up for barter after the economic collapses or after certain events happen? Having said all this, if you still want to spend your money, and what I usually tell people is, if you already have your basics covered, and by this I mean you already have your food covered, you have 6 months worth of food, you have water filtration methods, you have alternative forms of cooking, you have your finances already arranged, and you have a decent amount of savings as well. If you have a firearm for self-defense and you also know how to use it, if you already have all that covered and you still want to be spending money, then put that money into precious metals, which at least I know and we all know because of what history teaches us, it's gonna be retaining some of its value at least. And most likely, if the fiat currency goes down, or because of inflation, because of bad economic times, the precious metal generally goes up proportionally to how bad the things are in economic terms. So what I usually tell people is, you want to be spending some money in terms of barter, better yet put that money into precious metals, into gold and silver. So without further delay, I'm going to be doing two lists. One of these lists is going to be mostly about the possible barter items for an economic collapse, something like what happened in Argentina, what we experienced over there. It's gonna be a lot of what I've done myself, what has worked for me, or what I saw was of good value and was in demand as well. And another one which would go more likely for a war situation, civilians caught in the middle of warfare, civil war, foreign invasion, during sieges, during more end of the world type of events where there's, for one reason or another, maybe a huge natural disaster, a huge man-made disaster such as war, and supplies are not available anymore, and they're not gonna be coming back anytime soon. You're talking about months without supplies rolling in. Maybe because of a natural disaster, as I said before, maybe because your city is under siege, as it happened during the Bosnian War. There's a few differences between those two lists, and you'll see them as we go on. So let's start it. Let's get started with this. Two separate lists. First one, precious metals and jewelry. This would be my first option, as I mentioned before. If you want to put money into something that's going to be of value in the future, and you want to, again, draw on the little dice, because this is the way of reminding everyone that this is all a huge bet. This is all very unlikely and not certain by any means, right? So all that being said, precious metals are the ones that are going to be keeping their value the most. I've done videos about it before in YouTube. You can find them. It's the only thing that history teaches us, that no matter what, it may go up and down a bit, but it's not going to be losing its weight, right? That's a lesson to be learned. After the economic collapse in Argentina, jewelry, and the business of gold itself went up 500%. It ended up being more profitable to rob a jewelry store than a bank. That says a lot of how valuable this stuff is during times like those, all right? One more thing to mention: don't spend large amounts of money on jewelry gold, which is sometimes referred to as junk gold, or the silver version of it, the pre-65 dimes. Don't spend more money than the actual precious metal content of it. If not, just go for recognized forms of gold and silver, eagles, Canadian maple leaves, Krugerrands. Don't spend large amounts of money. Consider this something that I made reference to in my book before. Consider this pocket change version, but in precious metals, all right? That would be like the wedding bands, which is something that we've seen people selling when in need, selling some of their family heirlooms, some jewelry that was in the family, basically because of pure necessity, all right? Trying to hurry up a bit. Number 2, guns. Guns are one of the things that when I left Argentina, I sold for the best. It was very profitable. It sold very well. In some cases, I didn't lose money at all. It's my Glock, which I sold pretty much for the same money I bought it. That's something that I couldn't help. I mean, you can't help yourself from noticing that it's one of those things that does retain its value. If you're into firearms, you probably know World War II Mauser rifles. They still sell. There's still a market for that, and it helps a lot if you are in the firearms community of your town, of your city. If you move within a circle of friends and you already have a few guys you may end up calling, you just pick up the phone and chances are someone's gonna be interested in what you have. If not, if you end up going to a gun dealer, usually you're gonna be getting half of what's really worth, because the guy is like a pawn shop. The guy has to make a difference for himself, for his own profit. So it's better if you already know people and know who might be interested in it. Again, in my case, I left a stash of weapons in Argentina because it is my country after all. I can always go back there. I have my family, my friends. I can go to many places in Argentina and have a place to be in. Yet I still like to have a stash of gear over there. You know, it's within that survival and preparedness mindset of having plan A, B, and C, just in case something goes wrong. If something goes wrong in the northern hemisphere, you know, some huge catastrophe of some sort, I always have the option of going back to Argentina. Not gonna be doing that anytime soon, of course, but I like having that option. Which guns? If you are thinking of buying maybe an extra gun or two or whatever, and you're envisioning the possibility of, okay, maybe in the future if I ever have to sell it, which would be the guns that would have the better return? Which would be the guns that I would be selling for the best? Usually Glocks sell very well. 1911s, not the expensive stuff, but the more common ones, something not too fancy, that's something that works well but isn't very expensive. High powers as well. There was a time when the Barter Molina, which is produced in Argentina, used the same magazines as the 1911. That was selling for a steal, and later on it went up in price quite a bit. But you know, keep your eyes, especially if you know a thing or two about firearms, keep your eyes open, because sometimes opportunities do come up, especially when it's surplus stuff, when it's stuff from the police that they are changing their weaponry. Sometimes you find very nice offers, and you may add one weapon or two that may end up being of value for you in a barter situation later on. AKs, of course, AKs are something that sell very well. They're not that expensive today, and you're still gonna be able to sell it quite well in the future too. Magazines for all these I sold my Glock magazines for quite a bit of money. It turned out quite well for me. Also magazines for your AK, for your AR. Those are things that do sell well, and they sell fast enough. Moving on with number 3, toys. Toys was pretty much a surprise for us, for me mostly. We were leaving Argentina, and my kids, they had their toys, and my wife, she published them online for sale, and within that same day she had lots of offers, and she ended up selling practically all of them. They just brought a handful of toys, their most precious ones. The rest, we sold them all, and I was surprised to see how well toys had sold within a matter of days. A lot of those ended up going to resellers in some of the Argentine provinces. They would sell it themselves. We sold a lot of this stuff, and the money of the toys they sold, they later brought it, and they were able to buy toys themselves when we came here in Northern Ireland. Well, of course, we ended up donating lots of stuff as well, including toys, but mostly clothes. Clothes did sell, but didn't sell nearly as well. The amount of money you got offered for clothes, well, I mean, it really wasn't worth it. Clothes, those ended up going to some homes for kids, for little kids. Huge bags full of clothes from our kids. But again, I was surprised to see how well these toys were selling. The thing is, some of the nicest ones that they had that had been brought from, that they were imported, they were coming from China. Because of the problems with importations these days in Argentina, and the past year in 2011 as well, there's really not that many of it, and it's getting more scarce as time goes by. It's also getting more expensive. So at first I didn't quite understand. I suppose it's because parents want their kids to have nice stuff. You know, a good middle class parent will want his kid to be happy, and if he sees that he cannot afford buying new, or if he sees that there's not even the option of buying new stuff, he will go online and search and maybe find what is it that you're selling. So definitely nice toys, good stuff, not junk, but good stuff that was of okay quality. That sells pretty well after an economic collapse. At least it did in Argentina, and I could see how it could work as well in whatever other situation that replicates what happened over there. Mostly think of it this way: if there's a problem with the fiat currency of that given country and the importation becomes too expensive, it's understandable that those importations are going to be going down. And again, parents and kids, parents try to get whatever it is they can for their kids. Sometimes they go the extra mile for it. Moving on further, point number 4, which be body armor. Body armor, it's something that a lot of people don't keep in mind, but if I go to my own experience, when I was leaving, when I told the guys in the shooting club and the gun club that I was moving out of Argentina, one of the most common things that people told me when they approached me was, "So what are you gonna be doing with your body armor? You planning on selling it? What is it that you're gonna be doing?" This is something that a lot of people suddenly showed an interest in. People that didn't own body armor themselves, they knew I had it because I used it during my training, so they were curious about what I was gonna be doing with it. And it's something that I've mentioned many times. It's something that I've mentioned almost for a decade, the importance of body armor, because for training, but only for that, also for self-defense. It's surprising to see the amount of people that understand the importance of having a firearm, and they have a firearm in their bedroom. They have the firearm, the cell phone, and the flashlight, whatever, but no, in very few cases do they have body armor as well. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? I mean, someone that envisions the possibility of needing to use a weapon for self-defense, which is, I think it's understandable, why is it that that person doesn't envision also the possibility of needing something for defense when that happens? it's not very realistic to expect to get into gunfights and not get shot yourself. So, you know, people go, they hear a noise at night, they go to check it out, see what's going bump in the night. Usually it's nothing. Now, if one day you do go and that bump in the night is actually a person with a gun pointed at you, you will understand the importance of it. It's something that a lot of people still don't quite get. They're already on the right path. They have their weapon. Some of them do the training, and that's awesome. That's great. Yet they don't have that basic necessity for it. They do the firearms training. They go back home, and everything is nice and normal. That starts changing when things aren't nice and normal anymore, and your people in your environment, in your circle of friends, start getting hurt, start getting killed sometimes. You understand that may as well be you. That may as well be your case. One day you may get shot yourself during a home robbery. So that's when people understand how important it is. It's for a long time, body armor was very cheap in US. It still is quite, maybe not as great as a deal as it used to be, especially used as surplus body armor, which still had a good few years on it. That was selling for very cheap before, but it's still something that you should have. And if you want to have an extra vest, if you want to have some more for family members, or if you come by a good deal, yeah, it's definitely one of the things that no doubt will sell well, and you'll also find someone that is showing an interest in acquiring one. Body armor. Moving on, reloading gear. Reloading gear. A lot of us guys don't reload, or we don't feel the need to reload until you actually feel it in your pocket. That's when people start showing more of an interest in it. Eventually, it gets to a point where people cannot afford to shoot if they don't reload. That may not be the case for you, but in the future, if you're thinking of what would be valuable in the future, that may as well be the case. And here, yes, you sometimes come by good deals, especially in the single stage presses that have, you know, like the lever and just the single stage ones, those presses with the die. Some people buy it thinking of reloading. They never come around to do it, and they sell it for very little. If you come by a good deal with some shooting, with some reloading equipment, by all means, it is something that you may want to put some money in if it's cheap enough, because there's a good chance that if things keep getting worse in the future, more people will start reloading. And if what happened in Argentina was that these things were imported as well, which made it more expensive. So in my experience with this, I had one of the little Lee loader boxes. It's a little red box with with a few bits and pieces for reloading. It's called, right down here, Lee Loader Classic. This is basically a little box with some basic tools that allow you to reload by hand using a hammer and what's inside this little box, as long as you have the reloading components, you know, the gunpowder, the primers. Now, it's very slow, and of course, if you have a press, it's much easier and faster, but at least this allows you to reload a handful of shells, and that may be enough for someone. And another good thing it has going for it is they're very portable, so you can throw this in a backpack and have the necessary tools for reloading as well. In my case, I had one of these, and I was already leaving. I was leaving behind a pistol, a 45 ACP pistol, and I ended up going to the gun store, the one where I usually go, where I have, you know, the people that I know. I put that on the shelf and told them, okay, what can you give me for it? What's that? I explained what it was, and as soon as I explained what it was, the guy showed an interest in it. I ended up trading this Lee Loader Classic kit for 44 Magnum. It was for 44 Magnum. I traded it for two 45 ACP boxes of ammo. I traded for 2 boxes of ammunition, 50 round boxes of cellular and Belot 45 230 grain full metal jackets, it was a good deal because those boxes are cost about $20 each. So I basically got $40 worth of ammunition for this reloader kit that usually sells for cheaper. I definitely didn't pay nearly as much when I bought it myself. So it's one of those things that people sometimes don't think they're gonna be needing, but when they see that they cannot afford ammunition anymore, they start getting interested in it. So reloading gear, reloading equipment may just be it for you. It might be a good idea to keep in mind. So we talked a little bit about what would be a good idea for barter in case of an economic collapse or an economic crisis that goes on for a while. Let's talk a little bit about what would be a good idea for barter in case of war, of civil war, of periods of unrest, and maybe huge natural disasters that stop supplies altogether. First of all, food. All right? Food is one of those things that I always tell people, don't think of it as something you will be bartering with, because first of all, it's a pain to keep enough food for yourself is already a commitment. You're talking about 6 or 12 months worth of food. How much food are you going to be putting aside as well for bartering? You're going to be using that yourself. If the situation is as bad that you need to barter food, probably you're going to be needing it yourself. So why would you be bartering in the first place? Yet, since it's a basic for life itself, it's going to be clearly a sought after commodity. You don't want to be the guy that is out there bartering for food. Hopefully you've done some bit of preparing already and you have a good stash of this in case you ever need it. Number 2, water filter. Again, basic necessity for life. Food, water. When the water supply becomes disrupted and people end up going to unreliable sources of water, streams and rivers nearby and such, usually there's a good chance they may be polluted as well. So having a good water filter is a huge commodity. It's a huge advantage for you, and it saves resources, it saves fuel, so you don't have to use boiling to purify it. These, as you notice, are some of the basics you should have for survival and preparedness. Any decent, half-decent survival and preparedness plan should include a good amount of food and, of course, a water filter as well. So these are items that would be in demand, but hopefully you're not going to be needing themselves. You're not going to be needing those yourself. Hopefully you already have these in stock. Smokes and booze. Right, when the supply chain becomes disrupted, people that are used to smoking and drinking still have that habit or still have that addiction. Yet there's not supplies, and it does become a valuable commodity. In the prison system, smokes are pretty much like cash. You see that on the movies, and it's basically true. It's also true that they use cash as well, and cash is also valuable in the prison system. They use the phone cards as well, which are also like a huge commodity. But it is true that smokes and cigarettes are a sought after item. Now, would you be putting large amounts of smokes in stock in case something like that happens? I don't think it's a good idea. Honestly, I don't think it's much of an investment in any way. What about booze? What about alcohol? And also keep in mind that with these addictions, as things get worse, people that used to use them are going to be using them even more because it becomes a dependency for them. What about booze? The thing about alcohol is that you may want to get grain alcohol. And first of all, this is the most alcoholic beverage there is. Grain alcohol is, according to the Guinness Book of Records, Everclear, which is a brand of grain alcohol, is the most alcoholic beverage there is. It means it gets the most kick out of each shot, right? But it's not only that, it also has another advantage because it's also basically grain alcohol is ethanol, right? And ethanol is a fuel. It's pure alcohol. You should be looking for the 190 proof grain alcohol, 190 proof, which is the purest there is, without doing some other things that don't make it quite as good for drinking. So it's also a way, if you have one of the Trangia mini stoves that I've reviewed on a previous video, or if you do yourself a can stove or penny stove, check those out in YouTube. You will see some videos of it. Basically, it's a can, and you turn it into a stove. It's quite simple. But if you have ethanol, which is grain alcohol, you do have fuel for that. And fuel becomes very valuable in this situation because it allows you to cook food and to stay warm, right? So we're already talking about its possible use as an alcoholic drink, as an alcohol drink, and we're talking about its use also as a source of fuel. And also, it has another use for medical purposes, because pure alcohol can be used to sterilize and to clean wounds. So we're talking about an important barter option when having grain alcohol, but we're also talking about other two very basic and very important functions that it's able to perform. So because of this, I don't think it's that much of a bad idea to have a few bottles of grain alcohol. Everclear or some other brand that is cheaper, just make sure it's 190 proof. If you have a few bottles of this stuff, that's good in my opinion, because it has these other uses as well that are very important. Just the possibility of using in your Trangia stove for cooking your food that you have, that's great. Moving on a bit. Fuel and cooking supplies, right? If you have fuel for cooking and you have the pots and pans needed for that, it allows you to prepare the food you have in storage. Now, it's especially the fuel part that's the most tricky one. If there's not supplies rolling in, fuel will soon become in high demand. Think of the limited amount of wood for burning, fuel, alcohol, and other fuels for camping stoves. Those will run out quickly. People, if they are only depending on what they have at home, few people have significant amounts of wood and other fuels for cooking. It's gonna be quickly becoming scarce and in high demand. Not only fuel for cooking, also for vehicles as well. If you have that, you definitely have a worthy barter item. Number 5, medical supplies. Of course, if we have people in this dire situations where there's no supplies of any kind, that also will include medicines as well, and especially if it's antibiotics and such, those always are in high demand during wartime, during huge crises. There's always a demand for those basic medical supplies. And antibiotics don't seem as basic medical supplies, but we take them for granted. Now, if you have an infection going on and you don't have antibiotics, you're gonna be dying rather soon. It's again one of those things that people take for granted, and especially if you're talking about chronic diseases you may want to have those, a good supply of those as well. But medical supplies indeed are gonna be in high demand during a situation such as this one. All right. So guys, that's basically it. I hope you liked this video. I just covered what I've used myself or sold myself or saw that was in demand, and what I've learned through studying and reading and learning from other people's experience as well during times where the supply chain was disrupted. So guys, that was basically it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to subscribe as well, and take care. See you on our next video.